This happened when I was in elementary school. I think that I was in year 6, roughly 11 years old. My parents were called away urgently because one of my aunties or uncles were in need of some urgent childcare. They didn't go into the full details of why they had to go away, but I knew it was something serious. I remember it was a Saturday and my parents planned to leave at dusk. I was asked to keep an eye on my cousins since I was the eldest. I had a choice to go with my parents, and I wish I did, but it seemed way more fun to stay at home with my cousins. The cousins in question were a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. They were siblings. They kept nagging me to go and play with them. I couldn't take it anymore, and I buckled to the persistent requests from my little cousins. The younger sibling demanded a game of hide and seek. I didn't mind that. I wasn't too cool for a game of hide and seek. I thought that if I let them go and hide, I would have a couple of seconds peace while I counted down before I had to go and find them. I counted down from 50 and then I went to find them. My male cousin, the older sibling, hid in a nearby wardrobe, so he was easy to find. His sister, however, proved incredibly difficult to find. I couldn't really be bothered to search every place in the house, so I thought if I called out to her, I would be able to find her. I walked around the house, asking aloud, "Are you ready?" And because she was little and didn't really understand the premise of the game, she would enthusiastically answer, "Yes, I am." It sounded like she was hiding under the bed. I bent down as silently as I could and looked under the bed, but there was no one there. Strange. I called out again, "Are you ready?" And then I heard suppressed laughter coming from a wardrobe, a different one to the one I had found my cousin in. I threw open the door with a smile, and then frowned when I found it empty. At this point, her brother joined the hunt. She was a good hider, I'll give her that. We couldn't find her. After a few more minutes of searching, I started to feel uneasy. I got a little scared for her, so I called out to her one more time. "I surrender, you win, you're the champion, can you come out now?" I heard the bathroom door creak, and then I saw her smiling, victorious face. I just looked in the bathroom. It was pretty strange. I asked her outright, where was she hiding? After she stopped celebrating her victory over me, she replied, "That's the secret." We decided to play a board game after that. All the while, I couldn't get my mind off of what had just happened. It was stuck in my head, like, where the hell was she hiding? Later that night, my cousin's father came to pick up his children. Since the hour had grown late, I decided to take myself to bed. Looking back on it, why didn't I just go to their house? I'll still never understand that. While in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about that game of hide and seek. I think I must have dozed off. I heard a voice. You know, that dreamlike state right before you plunge into a deep sleep. You're hovering on the edge of consciousness. I was in that moment, and then I heard something. A voice from within my dark bedroom. "Are you ready?" I jolted awake, like that feeling you have when you're in that dreamlike state, where you feel yourself falling, and then you're suddenly awake. I heard it again. "Are you ready?" It was very, very faint, but I heard it. It was there. That voice didn't belong to either of my cousins, and it wasn't a young voice. I covered myself from head to toe in my duvet and blankets. That voice sounded old. It sounded adult and female. I heard it again. It sounded like it was getting closer. My body started involuntarily shaking. Panic gripped me. My heart was thumping. "Are you ready?" I couldn't reply like my cousin did. I couldn't just say, "Yes, I am." I didn't know what that would entail. I didn't know what would happen if I did that. I felt so scared and stressed, and I was still young, so the only logical answer that came to the forefront of my mind was, "No, I'm not ready." I heard that old woman voice whisper somewhere close to my bed in a voice as raspy as a mosquito. "Are you ready?" I felt as if I was about to be found in a game of hide and seek I didn't even enter into. This was the moment. The duvet and blankets were vigorously thrown upwards from my head. I screwed my eyes as tightly shut as I could. I let out the loudest scream I had ever heard. I fearfully opened my eyes after a few seconds and saw nothing but my dark and empty bedroom. I have no idea what the hell that was. I stayed up until my parents got home, absolutely petrified. I'm wondering if anyone else out there has had an experience like this. You rush to catch the elevator before the doors shut and get in, only to realize that another passenger is in there already. I'm sure that I'm not the only one who has experienced something like this. Whenever it's happened to me, I usually just turn to the person with an apology in mind in case I have startled them or something. So one morning, I had overslept and I was running late. I made it to my office and I raced to the elevator. Up ahead, I saw a woman enter the elevator and the doors had already begun to close. I sped up, probably made a bit of a scene, and then I threw my arms against the inside of the doors to prevent them from closing. I turned to acknowledge the woman in the lift, because, if I'm running late, she might be running late too, and I just slowed her down. However, when I turned around, I saw that there was no one in the elevator with me. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had literally just seen a woman go in the elevator before me. Maybe I had made a mistake? I didn't think so, though. I know what I saw. The empty elevator began its ascent, while I stood there puzzled. Something was wrong. The air in the elevator felt heavy and oppressive. I felt an intense, indescribable feeling of discomfort. Even though there was no one in there with me, I felt as if someone was watching me. The elevator stopped on the 6th floor. I stood back in anticipation and perhaps the hope of another passenger boarding. But when the elevator doors opened, I saw no one out there. No one was waiting to get in. And as I stood there wondering what the hell was going on, a gentle breeze seemed to push past my body from behind. I felt this strange gust of air flow forward and out onto the 6th floor. In the seconds I felt that breeze, I smelled the scent of a feminine perfume. I wonder if I was really alone in that elevator, or if something paranormal joined me. Has anything similar ever happened to you? This happened to me when I was in college. Have you ever felt this feeling? It's a feeling about a place you instinctively know you shouldn't go. Perhaps it's better described as intuition. It's not that you're forced to go or asked to go. It's kind of hard to explain, but let me give you an example. An alley on a dark night. Something about it makes you think, nah, I'm not going down there. Something just kicks in, right? I had a dog while I was in college, and I would often take him on walks after classes. Sometimes it was a bit of a pain in the ass to take the dog out every night. I feel as if most dog walkers will understand what I'm trying to say here. Some nights you just don't want to. It becomes a chore. Not often though. Well, not for me. I love dogs. So one night, while I was walking my dog, and I really wasn't in the mood for it, I decided to take a shortcut in an attempt to finish the walk a little earlier. Taking this shortcut meant that I would have to go down a road that I wouldn't usually go down. I started towards the path, and I instinctively felt a feeling of, nah. My dog didn't even pull on his lead. I felt as if he was experiencing the same feelings as I was. He normally pulls a little while we walk. The path was straight. Trees were growing on either side. Simply put, the trees created a natural kind of arch over this path. It almost looked as if this path had been left to grow over, like it wasn't well maintained, like it was abandoned. The whole area had been developed recently, but for some reason they didn't do anything to this path. It was weird. It creeped me out, and I know it shouldn't have because it's just a path with some trees on the other side of it, but it did. I wanted to go home, but I decided to take the path. It was the quickest way home, and I wasn't going to let my fear rule me. I headed down the path with my dog, and I could tell that the dog didn't want to be there as much as I did either. Even though I was freaking out, I hurried down that path and went home. Then after that, something strange happened. My left shoulder started hurting. It wasn't an unbearable pain. It just felt like a constant squeezing sensation. I had heard stories about possessions by spirits beginning this way, You know the feeling of a heavy shoulder? I thought it was far too cliché though. Other than shoulder pain, I was fine. These stories say that the next thing that happens to a person who a spirit has latched onto is illness or death of a family member. So I was really worried about my dog. To be honest, I love horror, but do I believe in ghosts? I'm not sure I can answer that with a yes 100%. I didn't believe anything was going to happen though. The pain was tolerable and everything was fine. I told myself to stop overthinking. A couple of days went by. The shoulder was still hurting, but I stopped caring. Everyone in my family was fine too. I knew it wasn't anything paranormal and I just got on with my life. One afternoon at university, I was walking past some woman, and she shrieked, "I ain't a handsome dude, but I know I'm not that ugly. What the hell was this? Women are screaming at me now?" The woman clearly saw me and screamed. It wasn't a great feeling. It hurt, you know, it made me feel self-conscious. I gave her a wide berth and just carried on walking. But when she screamed again the next time I happened to walk past her, I decided to go to a different part of the campus. The next day I saw her, I decided to immediately walk in another direction. I didn't want to deal with her. When she saw me on campus, she would quickly change direction too. It was weird. About 2 weeks roll by, and I get a call from a number I didn't recognize. I took the call, and it was a guy. He said that he was the boyfriend of the girl who had been so visibly disgusted by my appearance. He asked to meet me. He said that he and his girlfriend needed to speak to me about something urgently important. I almost hung up on him. But then he said he could explain why his girlfriend was acting so weird when she saw me. And I was more than curious to find out the answer to that. He asked me to meet him in an unpopular classroom on campus. I thought that was a little bit random, but I guess it would be better to speak in private rather than in front of my classmates. I met both of them in the classroom, and as soon as I went in the room, his girlfriend started freaking out again. I hated it. I started to wonder if they'd just called me to mock me or something. She was so freaking weird. She was acting like a character from a TV show or something. She wasn't normal, and I started to get a bit creeped out by her. Then her boyfriend, like he was cheering her on or something, prompted her to talk to me, like it was some kind of monumental challenge. "You're haunted," she said. Try and imagine it, right? A woman who always screams when she sees you tells her boyfriend to call you up and then bring you to a classroom to tell you that you're possessed or something. In normal circumstances, it would be kind of funny, but the story doesn't end there. So this girl at university has the sixth sense, and I'm haunted. Bullshit. I said, "What are you basing this on?" And she replied, "I cannot tell you. It's too dangerous. Can you please tell me your email address? We can talk there." What the hell is going on? I wondered. I had no other ailments or issues besides my shoulder. It had been sore for 2 months, but I mean, come on, that doesn't constitute a haunting, does it? So I refused. However, she managed to get a hold of my email address, and I started to get emails from her. I guess when you're a student, it's not that hard to find another student's email address, right? But anyway, every single night I would get something like this. "Are you okay? Are you still in pain? I need to help you." I have changed my email address a bunch of times since graduation, but she still somehow ends up finding it. It's so weird. It's been 5 years. My left shoulder still feels heavy and it hurts now and then, but I've really gotten used to it. My shoulder's the least of my problems though. It's this woman who scares me. People are creepier than ghost stories, trust me. She keeps trying to get in touch with me. There's an urban legend about some kind of monster called One. I think it's unique to where I grew up, although I have heard some people from neighboring villages share stories about it too. It was the type of story you were told when you were younger, and the intent was to scare you. When I first heard the story, it made me shudder. In short, it's about this hulking black figure that had this bone-white face. It watched you. That was the creepiest thing to me. It always watched you. It watched and waited to see if you misbehaved, and if you did, it would come for you. So I would spend most of my days outside of the watchful eyes of my parents, petrified that One was watching me. I didn't want to do anything bad. As years went on and I got older, I gradually forgot about the legend. One night during summer, when I was in high school, I remember my dad left suddenly to go and return a DVD. It wasn't like him to do that. When he drove, he always looked out of his windows, side to side, front to back, all the time. He was like that. We had these little farm lanes running through the masses and masses of fields, and as he passed by one field, he said he saw something. A huge dark figure with a pure white face stood in the middle of the lane between each field. He said that it didn't look like a regular guy, and he hadn't seen anyone that big before. He was surprised, but wasn't interested in stopping. I would try and describe what he said he saw in a little more detail. Well, like I said, it had a pure white face. It looked like it was wearing thick clothes too. He said he saw a hat as well. The reason I remember it so well was because my dad's description of it sounded so unnervingly creepy. My dad said he probably just saw a scarecrow in a field. He thought that if it was a scarecrow, it would probably be in the same place, in the same field, on the way back from the store. And he made a mental note to check it. And if it was a human, then it wouldn't hang around in one spot for too long. He ended up being about an hour at that video store. So on the way back from the store, he kept his eyes out for it. He passed the field where he saw it, and it was still in its original position. However, when he looked in the rearview mirror, he saw that thing step out into the road. He was adamant that he saw that. Because we lived in a rural area, there were many straight country lanes on the drive home. All he could think about was that thing was somewhere behind his car out there in the dark. He was drinking when he told me this. He said that, I'm glad I wasn't doing something I shouldn't have been, you know. And that made me remember the legend we were told as children. I asked my dad about it. I asked him about the creature called One. I wanted to find out more about it. It turns out the story wasn't something that adults created to scare children. This is going to be kind of hard to explain, but I'll try my best. In Japan, we feel intense societal pressure, behaving well in public, at home, anywhere. We feel like we are being watched, and we feel like the shame or fear of being caught doing something we shouldn't is unbearable. I think that goes for most people on Earth. So if you imagine you're a little kid and you're caught starting a fire or something, you start to worry about how much trouble you're going to get in with your parents, or the police, all sorts. So One is the watcher. We were taught that if you were doing something you shouldn't, One would be watching, then One would slowly come for you. So an example I heard was, don't stay up late, One will come and get you, stuff like that. So you can see how it evolved into a monster over time. The meaning got a little bit lost. Now the meaning can be like, One always watches from outside. It lives in the forest and the mountains. When One finds his target, he will slowly come for you. He will creep his way up to your house and he'll get you. The origins of the story scared me. This terrifying black shadowy figure with a bone white face was always watching and waiting for you. And that night, my dad felt like he actually saw it. It shouldn't be real. It was something that shouldn't exist outside of the stories from the school playground. I have never heard of One actually hurting anyone, but that's not to say it's impossible. This story seems to be handed down from generation to generation, as both my dad and my grandpa were told about One when they were younger, right down to its monstrous appearance. I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, but we don't have many troublemakers in our town. As soon as any trouble begins, it's just as quickly gone. I don't usually see many people on the streets at night either. I wonder if they're all worried about One. It seems preposterous, but our village is pretty silent and like a ghost town at night. When you think about it, One isn't that bad of a thing. If someone sees it, they just have to stop doing whatever bad thing they were doing before it follows you home, right? So, I don't know what my dad was doing that night that was bad. But I was really scared for him. When you stop doing the thing you shouldn't, then One won't get you. That's the hope. I don't know, maybe he made it up. Maybe he only said it because he was drunk, but it scared me, and I wanted to share it. The origin of One was pretty creepy too.